Hello, welcome to the third day of Christmas of the 12 days that we're doing. And today we're talking about the shepherds. Um, a lot of times we think of the shepherds as that were the ones that, the little shepherd boy he maybe even had a drum, or he brought a little lamb over his shoulders. There's this sense of now it's just kind of a really beautiful scene of animals being brought with some of the shepherds to the scene of Jesus' birth. But one of the things that it's just not how it really would have been seen in the first century. In the first century, around the time of Jesus' birth, it was a whole different story because shepherds, even though shepherds had a valued place in the mindset that the shepherds were God's people, by the time we get to Jesus' birth, shepherds were kind of seen as untrustworthy. They were nomads. They didn't live in one place for too long because they took their sheep from place to place to make sure they didn't overgraze. And so actually our nativity scene here at the church, the shepherds, I think, fit more of what people might have thought. So one of the shepherds over here, it kind of is this guy. And he kind of looks more like I think the word hobo, I don't know if it's the right place, but a homeless person. And he's got his bag over his shoulder, he's got the crook, but he just kind of looks he looks happy, don't get me wrong, but he does not look as regal as Mary and Joseph do. And then we have, we've got kind of the more prettified version of the young man carrying a lamb. And here we have one that's a little bit more stooped, a little more aged, a little bit where time's been a little harder. It's really much closer to how they would have been seen back in the day, back in Jesus' time. But the weather would have been harsh on their skin. There wasn't sunscreen. There were hats. There were hats, but there wasn't, ball caps and other things. No one had lotion to put upon their faces that they didn't make themselves. And so there's something pretty amazing about the fact that these are the people that Jesus' birth was first announced to. That it wasn't the kings, it wasn't Herod, it wasn't the emperor, it was the people seen as the lowest of the low. Where historically, King David was a shepherd, Jacob was a shepherd, the people of the great lineage of Jesus, many of which were shepherds before they were kings. And yet, these are the folks that people didn't think were trustworthy. They thought they would steal things. They thought they were gypsies. Not that gypsies is a bad thing, but there's still that kind of sense of people who travel from place to place are not to be trusted. And so in the midst of Jesus' birth, the first ones to come see him, the first ones to get this notice, are those at the bottom of the social totem pole, at the bottom of society. It speaks to a great, beautiful thing. That is, God cares so much about all of us, but those who are hurting, who have the least, that God cares very, very much about as well. It's also a reminder to those of us who are a little better off than the shepherds may have been or may have appeared to be, to have a mind like Jesus, to say, who are we missing? Who is not in the room? Who do we need to reach out to? Who needs our help? Because as people of God, we have gone past this point of how is God going to serve us? And we've gotten to this place is how we can serve. How can we serve God? It's a beautiful thing this time of year that we are generally reminded of a need for generosity, a need to help those who are in the cold, who are hungry. It's one of the great things that I appreciate about our community is this the way that the food pantry is supported in such a wonderful way. The way the clothing closet helps people to have clothes, and that there are multiple other ways that we help people in our community. there's also this calling too to look outside of the walls. And I think that's another thing that we learn from the shepherds being the first to hear this news. They would have been the people away from the city. They would have been people out in the hills. And so I wonder sometimes what our calling is for our neighbors. Not those who are immediately next to us maybe, but those down the road. How can we be in connection? How can we offer our services to the people in Lincoln? And I know we go and we help. There's a group that goes and helps feed the homeless and provide meals in Lincoln. There's so many opportunities there too, but there's also such a great need. So one of the questions I like to ask or ask myself in my prayer time around Christmas is, who in our area, in our section of the world, might the angels appear to first? And how, in turn, can we be in ministry so that we can be some of the first people who hear of God's great proclamations? Because it must have been a wonderful thing to hear the angels appear and sing for the first time. It must have been a wonderful moment to see the heavens open up and proclaim the glory of God. So when we work with the least and the lost, Jesus tells us that he's there. So may you be blessed this Christmas. And more importantly, may you be a blessing to others.